The year was 1998, and the internet was still a novelty in most households. Dial-up modems screamed through the phone lines, chat rooms buzzed with mystery, and the concept of meeting someone online still felt exotic, maybe even dangerous. But to 22-year-old Claire Montgomery, the computer screen was a window into something better than her current life. Claire lived in a small apartment above her mother's flower shop in a sleepy Ohio town. Her father had passed away from a heart attack when she was 16, and since then she'd taken on the quiet role of responsibility, working, paying bills, looking after her younger brother Jeremy, and occasionally sneaking away into the late hours of the night to explore the digital world. That's how she met Daniel. His username was Steel Ranger 91, and he'd introduced himself as a 25-year-old Army Ranger stationed in Germany. The first message was simple: "You seem like someone who doesn't belong in a small town." She smiled when she read it. He was right. Over the next few weeks, their online chats turned into late-night emails, then phone calls. Daniel's voice was steady and deep. He told her about the cold barracks, the guys in his unit, and how he missed the feel of a warm cup of coffee in an actual mug. Claire would describe her days stocking lilies and carnations, how her boss always wore too much cologne, and how she hated the sound of wind chimes. They laughed about stupid things, and sometimes she'd fall asleep with the phone still tucked against her ear. Then one night in early April, Daniel said something that made her freeze. "I'm on leave next week. I want to meet you in person." Claire's heart skipped. She'd fantasized about him showing up at her door, imagined introducing him to her mom, maybe even bringing him to the park by the lake where she used to go with her dad. But now it was real. He arrived on a Friday afternoon. She spotted him before he even made it out of the cab, tall, square-jawed, with cropped brown hair and a duffel slung over one shoulder. He wore a green field jacket with faded name tags stitched above the breast pocket. It read McCarthy. They spent the weekend inseparable. He was charming, polite, the kind of man who opened car doors and walked on the outside of the sidewalk. He took her out to a local diner, then to a movie, something dumb and romantic. Her mother was skeptical, of course, but Daniel was quick to win her over with stories about the army and how Claire reminded him of home. By Sunday night, they were tangled in each other's arms in Claire's apartment, the world outside reduced to nothing more than muffled wind and the soft hum of the refrigerator. Then Monday morning came, and with it a proposal. "I don't want to waste time," he said, cupping her cheek with one hand. "I've got to go back next week, but I know what I want. Marry me, Claire." She laughed at first. "You're serious?" "I've never been more serious about anything." It was crazy. She knew that, but there was something in the way he looked at her, like he was seeing her, really seeing her, that made the insanity feel like fate. They went to the courthouse that same week. It was a quiet wedding. No white dress, no bouquet, just Daniel in his army jacket, Claire in a blue sundress, and a justice of the peace who looked like he'd rather be somewhere else. Her mother didn't approve but didn't stop her either. "You're grown now," she said. "You'll live with the choices you make." And for a few weeks, it felt like the right one. Daniel stayed through the end of April. He'd leave early in the mornings and say he was running drills to stay in shape. He'd bring her coffee afterward, and they'd sit on the fire escape outside her window talking about the future, maybe moving to North Carolina, where he said he was originally from, maybe starting a family. Then one day, he was gone. She came home from work to find his things missing. No note, no explanation, just a single dog tag left on her nightstand. It read McCarthy, Daniel J. 42187555310 POS. Panic set in. She called his number. It was disconnected. She emailed, nothing. 3 days later, there was a knock at her door. Two men in dress uniforms stood in the hallway. One held a small folder. The other had the kind of face that had delivered bad news 100 times before. "Ma'am," the first one said, removing his cap, "are you Claire Montgomery?"
"Yes."
I'm sorry to inform you, but Sergeant Daniel McCarthy died in action in Bosnia 3 years ago. Claire blinked, the words sliding off her brain like water off glass. That's not possible. The soldier opened the folder and handed her a photocopy of a casualty report. It had Daniel's name, his rank, the date of death, August 11, 1995. I just married him, she said, voice trembling. Last month. The men exchanged a look. I think we should talk inside. They sat at her kitchen table for over an hour. She showed them the dog tag, the marriage license, even the photo they'd taken at the diner. One of the soldiers examined it closely, then pointed at the uniform Daniel wore. This patch. This isn't the right insignia for someone who served in Bosnia. What does that mean? The other man leaned forward. It means whoever you married wasn't Sergeant Daniel McCarthy. 2 weeks later, Claire was invited to attend a formal Army funeral for Daniel in Arlington. She didn't know why, maybe for closure, maybe because they didn't know what else to do with her. She went anyway. It was a cold gray morning. Rain threatened overhead, but never fell. Rows of headstones stretched out across the cemetery like silent guards. She sat in the front row with a small bouquet of lilies in her lap. A flag-draped casket sat a few feet away. When the service ended and the crowd thinned out, a senior officer approached her. Would you like to see him before we bury the casket? Claire nodded slowly. He led her toward the casket and lifted the lid. It took less than 2 seconds for her legs to give out beneath her. Because the man inside wasn't Daniel. Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you are watching from today and what time you are currently watching this video. If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to like, share and subscribe for more. Claire's scream never made it past her throat. Her body just collapsed, knees hitting the grass, eyes locked on the face inside the casket. The officer caught her under the arms before she could fully hit the ground. That's not him, she whispered, her voice hollow. That's not Daniel. The man inside the casket was older, maybe mid-30s. He had a thick scar across his jaw and salt and pepper stubble. Claire could still remember the exact curve of Daniel's smile, the deep dimple in his left cheek, the way he blinked when he was thinking. This man wasn't even close. The officer quickly shut the casket and glanced around to see if anyone else had noticed. We should speak somewhere private, he said quietly. They led her to a small gray building at the edge of the cemetery, a place for clergy and staff. Inside, she sat on a folding chair across from the officer, while a second soldier locked the door behind them. I need you to tell me everything, the officer said. She did, from the first chat online to the last morning she saw him. The emails, the phone calls, the marriage license, and finally the dog tag he left behind. She showed it to them again. This number doesn't match any current active duty personnel, the officer muttered. Then how did he know everything? Claire asked. He talked about bases, operations. He had details. He even told me names of guys in his unit. He may have had access to classified personnel records, the second soldier said. Or he was close enough to someone who did. Are you saying he stole Daniel's identity? We're not ruling that out, the officer replied. But we've never seen anything quite like this. Claire was allowed to go home that day, but her life no longer felt like her own. She couldn't sleep. Every knock on the door made her jump. Every phone call made her heart race. Her world had been hijacked, and the man she'd trusted, the one she married, had vanished like smoke. 3 days later, she received a letter in the mail with no return address. Inside was a single Polaroid photo. It was Daniel. He stood in front of a rusted metal gate with a chain around it. His jacket was different this time. No patches, no rank, just plain olive green. He held up a newspaper, dated 3 days prior. Claire dropped the photo like it had burned her fingers. She turned it over. On the back in messy block handwriting, it said, "Don't trust them." She reported the photo to the army. They sent someone out the next morning, not in uniform, but in a dark suit with no name tag. He was polite, but firm. "Miss Montgomery, we strongly advise you not to speak to the press or anyone else about this photo." "Who is he?" she asked. "What does he want from me?" "We're investigating," he said. "You'll be contacted if we learn anything useful." But days turned into weeks. No more photos, no calls, no updates. Claire felt like a ghost inside her own life. One afternoon, unable to take it anymore, she drove to the last place she remembered Daniel talking about, a small roadside diner in Columbus, where they'd taken their only picture together. She hoped maybe someone there would remember him. The waitress, a tall woman with bright red nails, squinted when Claire showed her the photo. "Yeah, I remember him. Military guy, right? Came in a few times with you. Do you remember if he came in alone, after he left town?" She shook her head. "Can't say I do. But there was this one time. He met someone here. A guy in a brown leather jacket, sat at the booth by the window, talked real quiet, but it didn't seem friendly. They left separately. I remember because he tipped bad that day." Claire jotted down everything she could. A brown jacket, middle-aged, medium height. She knew it wasn't much, but it was something. The next day she did something she never thought she'd do. She called in a favor from an old high school friend, Mark Taylor, who now worked as a rookie journalist for a small-time news outlet in Cleveland. "Claire, this is wild," Mark said after she told him everything. "You're saying you married a guy who's been legally dead for 3 years, and he just vanished?"
"Yes.
"And the army either knows something, or they're hiding something." Mark agreed to look into it on the condition she gave him everything. Marriage papers, phone logs, the Polaroid. She agreed. A week later, Mark called her. "Claire, you're not crazy." "What?" "I found something. There was a Daniel J. McCarthy, who served in Bosnia and died in '95. "Yes. But there was another Daniel J. McCarthy, who went AWOL in '94. Similar age, different service branch. He disappeared right after a mission in Honduras. Never turned up again. The official file is sealed, but I pulled a redacted summary through a military leak archive." "You think they're the same person?" "I think someone wanted them to be the same person." It was all falling apart faster than Claire could keep up. If Daniel was the AWOL soldier, then he'd been hiding under the identity of a dead man. But why? That night, someone broke into her apartment. She came home from her shift at the flower shop to find her drawers pulled open, files scattered across the floor, the back window cracked open. Nothing was stolen. Not her money, not her jewelry, not even the photos she'd left on her desk, but the dog tag was gone. She called the police. They filed a report. No prints, no real evidence. Probably a local junkie, the officer said, looking for pills or quick cash. But Claire knew better. Daniel, or whoever he really was watching her, or worse, someone else was. Claire stopped sleeping through the night. She started locking her bedroom door and keeping a heavy flashlight by her bed. Every time she closed her eyes, she imagined someone watching her from the shadows. Not a ghost, not a monster, just someone real, dangerous, and close. Mark, the journalist, stayed in touch daily now. He'd begun digging deeper than he was allowed to. Using burner emails and encrypted sites, he found something he said she needed to see. They met in a park just outside the city. It was late, around 9 p.m. The place was mostly empty, except for a man walking his dog on the far path. Mark had a manila folder under his arm and a nervous twitch in his left eye. "You're not gonna like this," he said, handing her the folder. Inside were pages of redacted documents, military transfers, disciplinary reports, a photo of a soldier in cuffs being let off a plane. "That's him," Claire whispered. "That's Daniel." Technically his name was Stephen Daniel McCarthy, Mark said. He dropped the first name. But get this, he was part of something called Project Sentry, a special task unit formed for high-risk overseas assignments. The records are sealed tighter than Fort Knox, but from what I found, a few men went missing, not killed, just off the books. Claire flipped through the papers. Most of them had black bars over key words. She could barely make out dates or locations. Why would someone do this? Mark lowered his voice. My guess, he found out something he wasn't supposed to. Or maybe he did something they didn't want getting out. So they erased him, reassigned, changed identities, whatever it took. Claire looked at the blurry photo again. So the man I married, he was running, maybe. Or maybe he thought you were his way out. That night, Claire didn't go home. She checked into a cheap motel off the highway, paid in cash and used a fake name. She barely slept, but at least she wasn't in her apartment, wondering if someone would come back for her. In the morning, she found a note slipped under her door. Stop digging, you're not ready for the truth. No name, no handwriting, just block letters, typed, printed and cut. Claire called Mark immediately. He answered on the second ring. Are you okay? He asked. No, she said. Someone knows where I am. I didn't tell anyone. Then they're tracking you. The line went quiet for a moment. Then he said, pack your things, meet me in person. One more place we can try. They met 2 hours later at a coffee shop in a different city. Mark had rented a car. He handed her a burner phone, brand new and still in the box. We're going to see someone who used to work in Intel, retired. He owes me a favor. Is this safe? Claire asked. Honestly, no, but it's the only shot we have left. They drove 3 hours into the country, following a twisting path of 2-lane roads, past farms and abandoned barns. Eventually they reached a gated property surrounded by trees. A no trespassing sign swung on a rusted chain-link fence. Mark honked twice. After a few minutes, a man appeared from behind the house. He looked about 60, heavy-set with a gray beard and mirrored sunglasses. He didn't speak, just opened the gate and motioned for them to come in. Inside the house, the air smelled like cigars and old paper. The walls were lined with filing cabinets and dusty bookshelves. Mark introduced Claire. The man, who only went by Red, didn't ask many questions. He just looked through the photo, the note, and the files. When he saw the Polaroid Daniel had sent her, he paused longer than necessary. This gate, he said, tapping the background. I've seen it. Claire's pulse jumped. Where? Desert, southwest, near a place called Calico Range. Used to be a decommissioned base out there, but I heard whispers it was reopened quietly, under a new name. No press, no oversight. Guys who went in didn't always come out. Claire leaned forward. Do you think he's still alive? Red didn't answer right away. He stared at her for a long time, then said, if he is, he's not who you think he is anymore. Before she could reply, Mark's phone buzzed. He checked the screen and his face went pale. It's my editor, he said. They just raided my desk, took everything, said it's classified material, and shut down my story. Claire's heart dropped. You think they're coming after us next? They already are. Red walked over to one of his file cabinets and pulled out a hand-drawn map. If you're going to find him, he said, you'll need this. It's not on GPS, not even on military maps anymore. But this is where your man was last seen. If that Polaroid is recent. Claire stared at the red X marked near an old canyon. Just be careful, Red said. Places like that don't give answers. They bury them. The next morning, Claire and Mark hit the road in his rented car, driving west with a bag of supplies, a few $100s in cash, and no clue what they were walking into. They avoided main highways, used gas stations only when necessary, and swapped license plates once they crossed state lines. 2 days later, they arrived at a town that barely existed, a single diner, one gas pump, and a boarded-up motel. They showed the Polaroid to a man sweeping the front of the diner. You looking for the gate? He asked. Claire nodded. Have you seen it? He jerked his thumb west. About 20 miles that way, but I'd stay clear if I were you. Folks go snooping out there and don't always come back. Claire didn't flinch. She was too far gone now to turn back. By late afternoon, they reached the area on Red's map. Dirt roads turned into gravel, then faded into rocky paths. The sun dropped behind the canyon walls, casting long shadows, and there it was. The rusted gate from the photo. Claire's breath caught. Her hand trembled as she stepped out of the car. She moved toward the gate slowly, heart pounding so loud she could barely hear anything else. Mark stayed close, camcorder in hand, filming everything. Then Claire spotted something. Near the bottom of the gate, just under the chain, a small white tag fluttered in the wind. She knelt down. It was another photo. Daniel, bruised, eyes swollen, holding another newspaper, and scrawled in pen at the bottom were 4 words, "They know you're here." Claire didn't move for a long time. The photo in her hand felt heavier than paper. Daniel's face, beaten, swollen, scared, looked nothing like the man she'd married, but the eyes were the same. She could see it in the way he stared at the camera. It wasn't just a cry for help, it was a warning. "They know you're here." Mark lowered his camcorder. "We need to go." Claire shook her head. "No, we need to go in." Beyond the gate, the gravel road disappeared into a cluster of dead brush and boulders. There were no signs, no patrols, no cameras that she could see, but every instinct screamed that something was wrong. Mark hesitated. "You realize if we cross that gate, we're trespassing on federal land, whatever's left of it. If they catch us, then we'll finally get answers." They climbed through a gap under the rusted gate and followed the path on foot. It was quiet, dead quiet, no birds, no wind, not even the sound of insects. Just the crunch of gravel under their boots and the pounding of Claire's heart in her ears. About a half-mile in, they found it. A compound built low into the earth, camouflaged by stone and sand. From a distance, it looked like part of the canyon, but up close they saw faded concrete walls, vents, and antenna stubs poking from the roof. Claire crouched behind a rock. "This place is real." Red wasn't lying. Mark zoomed in with his camera. "I'm recording everything. We get in, find proof, and get out." But there was no clear way inside. No doors, no guards, no keypads. Just the sharp angles of reinforced walls and a half-buried tunnel entrance. They approached the tunnel cautiously. It was wide enough to drive a truck through, but dark and silent. Mark handed Claire a small flashlight. The beam barely cut through the thick blackness ahead. They stepped inside. At first it was just dust and silence. Then came the faint hum of power, low and steady, like a machine buried deep underground. Lights flickered dimly above, some broken, others barely holding on. About 50 feet in, they came to a steel door. It wasn't locked. Claire pulled the handle and stepped through. Inside was a hallway, clean, cold, too well kept for a place supposedly abandoned. Mark whispered, "Someone's been here, recently." They crept forward, passing doors labeled with letters and numbers, B2, B3, C1, until they found a control room with monitors still lit. One of the screens cycled through black and white footage of rooms, cells. In one of them, a man sat on a bench. Claire leaned in, her throat tightened. It was Daniel. He looked thinner, weaker, but alive, breathing, blinking, real. Mark hit a key. "This isn't recorded. It's live." Claire looked around the room. There were keys, security badges, and a folder left open on the desk. She flipped through it. McCarthy alias Daniel Carter status, detained level 4 assignment, suspended until internal inquiry complete. And then a note, handwritten, married civilian contact. Potential leak risk. Emotional attachment compromised protocol. Claire's stomach turned. He wasn't hiding from the army. He was punished for being with me. Mark's hands trembled. "They locked him up because he talked to you." She grabbed a key card and ran down the hall. Mark followed close behind. They stopped at a heavy door marked Unit 4C. the same cell they'd seen on the monitor. Claire swiped the card. A green light flashed. The door clicked open. Daniel looked up, stunned. For a second, no one moved. Then Claire stepped forward, and he stood slowly, like he hadn't walked in days. "You're real," he said. "They told me you stopped looking." She grabbed him, holding on like she might fall apart. "I never stopped," she whispered. "What is this place?" Daniel looked over her shoulder at Mark. "We don't have much time. They'll be back." He limped toward the door. Claire helped him walk. "Tell me everything," she said. "Start from the beginning." As they moved down the hall, Daniel spoke in a low, urgent voice. "I was part of a classified unit. We were sent into unstable areas with no backup and no records. If something went wrong, we were ghosts. Disposable. In '95, our convoy got ambushed. 2 men died. I was the only one who made it out." Claire listened, every step tightening the knot in her chest. "I'm supposed to report in, but I found out the mission wasn't official. No support, no rescue. I was just a name they wanted to erase." "So you disappeared," she said. "I used my middle name, got out, went online. I just wanted to feel human again. And then I met you." They reached the tunnel entrance. Daniel's breathing was labored. "They pulled me back in when I got married, said I was compromised, said you were a risk, but I think they just wanted to shut me up." Outside, the sky was darkening. Mark helped them get Daniel into the back seat. Claire jumped into the passenger seat, but just as they pulled away from the compound, headlights flared behind them. "Drive," Daniel shouted. Mark hit the gas, tires spinning on the gravel. A black SUV gave chase, gaining fast. Claire looked back. No plates, no markings, just tinted windows and steel. Bullets hit the back of the car, glass shattered. "Left," Daniel barked. Off the trail, Mark veered off-road, kicking up dust. The SUV followed, but lost speed on the rocks. They swerved between hills, tires skidding until they reached a back road that curved into an abandoned rail tunnel. Mark drove straight in and cut the engine. Silence. They waited, breathless, as the SUV passed by above. Unaware, they turned off. Minutes later, they eased back out and drove through the night, sticking to small roads, staying off cameras, avoiding gas stations. By dawn, they reached a safe house. Red had set up months ago. Claire wrapped Daniel in blankets and gave him water. His hands trembled as he held the cup. "What now?" she asked. Mark turned from the window. "Now, we tell the world." He uploaded the footage, the documents, and Daniel's testimony to multiple encrypted channels. Journalists from 3 countries received copies. Backup drives were hidden. Within hours, a wildfire spread through newsrooms, forums, and military watchdog groups. By nightfall, Daniel's face was on every screen. The man declared dead in 1995 was alive, and had proof. The funeral Claire had once stood at had been for someone else. An investigation followed. Names were redacted, reports were denied, but the footage didn't lie. Daniel was free now, but watched. Claire knew the truth had a cost. Their lives would never be normal, but they had each other, and the lies were no longer in the dark. If you liked this story, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Also another to strengthen our community. Let us know in the comments where you are watching from and what time you are currently watching this video.